Canada's top-tier CEOs earn annual salaries that boggle the mind. The highest paid for 2016 made more than $83 million, while the average across the top 100 CEOs was somewhere just north of $10 million per year. Those numbers, according to the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives' yearly analysis of executive compensation. And while many of us probably envy them, we might also wonder, are they worth it? Joining us now to consider that, David McDonald, Senior Economist at the Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives, and Partha Mohanram, who is a Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario Professor of Financial Accounting at the University of Toronto's Rotman School of Management. And it's good to have you gentlemen back on our program. Here at TVO tonight, you actually in person.
It's great to be here in Toronto.
Normally you're on the line in the nation's capital.
That's right.
This is from your study, and doesn't this just sum it up? Shall we bring this quote up, please? As in past years, we express the pay gap as a factor of time. By 10:57 a.m. on January 2nd, Canada's average top 100 CEO will have already taken home what the average Canadian worker will make all year. When we started compiling this data, the average CEO had to work until late afternoon to meet this milestone. It has been getting closer to breakfast in most of the years since. Okay, David, let's do some comparing and contrasting. How much does the average worker in Canada make?
Well, just under $50,000, and the growth in the past year has been relatively small at about 0.5%, and so they're probably losing once you include inflation in that calculation. Whereas the CEO pay, on the other hand, went up about $1 million from $9.5 to $10.5 million in the past year. And that was actually largely due not to people at the very top making more, but it was people at the bottom of that 100 list pulling themselves up, in essence. So it used to be that you needed about $3.5 million to get on the top 100 list, and now you need over $5, which means that the minimum wage to get on this list is just under $2,500 an hour. You can contrast that to the $15 an hour that Ontario and Alberta and several other places are going over the next couple of years.
Let me do one follow-up here. Do you think it's reasonable to compare the salaries of top-paid CEOs and the average worker when the CEOs, of course, have more responsibility, tend to have more education, and 100 other metrics that would obviously weigh in their favor?
Well, absolutely. CEOs are always going to be paid more than the average worker. I think the question is, how is that ratio changing over time? So one of the firsts this year was that the CEOs made 200 times, or just over 200 times, average worker pay.
When was that?
This year.
This year, okay.
This year, yeah. And so this is unusual, although the trend is very clear. If you go back to the 1990s, the late 1990s, that ratio was about 100 times average worker pay. You go back to the 1980s in the US, it was about 50 times average worker pay. And you go back to the 70s, it goes to 30. So the issue isn't that CEOs get paid more, which they absolutely do. It's that the gap is widening year after year. So the CEOs are seeing big raises, the average workers aren't. And the question is, when we see economic growth, when we see companies do well, who benefits from that? Is it everybody in the company, or is it just, the top tier of the executive management?
Let's pick this apart. Obviously, CEOs are paid and should be paid more than, the lowest person on the growth chart in the company. Question is the rate at which the gap is growing. Do you find that problematic?
Oh, I do. I read the report, and I think I agree with like 90% of what's in that report. I mean, the fact is, are they worth it? The answer is no. They've never been worth it. And they aren't worth it now. They've not been worth it, for a number of years. If you look at this, this notion of pay for performance sensitivity, there's almost none. So CEOs, there is a lot of pay for performance sensitivity when CEOs do well. When CEOs do well, when the companies do well, they do incredibly well. When the companies do badly, they do just well. So as a result, there is no downward sensitivity. There's no CEO who gets, other than extreme performance, which can lead to termination and so on and so forth. It's a very rare occurrence that a CEO actually gets bad compensation for bad performance. They get less good compensation.
Can I ask a bit of a chippy in your face question?
Sure.
Who are you to decide whether they're worth it or not?
No, it's like, that's the biggest problem with this discussion. The example I would give is these are all consenting adults, right? Shareholders are consenting adults. They are either willfully or, in an ignorant manner, letting CEOs get paid these kinds of compensation. The analogy I would give is with fast food. We all know that, junk food and eating 5 Big Macs is bad for you, right? But we can't outlaw Big Macs. What we can do is we can increase disclosure. So for instance, if you go to a fast food restaurant right now, they very clearly lay out what the calories are. Mm-hmm. So on the margin, some people might decide to not get that third Big Mac or supersize those fries. They might decide to be a little more, moderate in their consumption.
Because they have the information.
Because they have the information. So things like say on pay, which is this law which has been passed in almost, sort of most Western countries, where companies are required to at least get non-binding shareholder approval for any sort of compensation packages that they decide to give to their CEOs and so on. Or the rise of activist shareholders who are, in a sense, at least holding some of these boards, feet to the fire, saying, how come our return last year was below the median, but yet our CEO or whatever earned this much money?
Well, okay. Gentlemen, humor me here for a second, because for me, everything in life comes back to baseball, okay? Josh Donaldson, the Blue Jays third baseman, just signed a one-year contract for, let me get the number right, $23 million for 1 year. He is a former most valuable player of the American League. He brings people into the stadium. He's a fantastic player. He's young. People love watching him. However, Meredith Martin, the producer, says into my ear, and he's handsome too. Okay, that's her observation, not necessarily mine. However, he could get injured the first day of spring training, miss the whole season, and he's going to make that money anyway. Here's the point. If the market says your CEO, David, is worth $10 million a year, and the company doesn't perform like you think a guy who makes $10 million a year ought to have it perform, that's life, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I think what's important is how CEOs are paid is a big part in why CEO pay is increasing. So we talk about CEO pay. It's not that they get a salary of $10 million. In fact, their salary is a very small portion of...
We got a chart. Should we bring this up?
Let's show the chart.
Pie
We've
chart
got
here.
the pie chart.
Okay.
Here we go.
We got Michael Smith sitting in for Sheldon Osman here today. So Michael, bring up the chart. Okay, as you point out, look at that red wedge of the pie in the top right corner there. Yeah. The base salary is only 11%. David, do you want to take us through the rest of it?
Sure. Well, the base salary is about 11%, and most of the other categories outside of the pension value, which is 3%, are in some way related to the share price. Either they're receiving shares, either they're receiving options to buy shares in the future at a set price, or they're receiving some bonus, which is often related to the share price.
That's the second biggest wedge of that pie, the bonus.
Well, yeah,
So,
I mean, in all these cases, every single
into it.
one of these little pieces doubles or triples the amount of their base salary. And so you end up with the average CEO making about $1 million in base salary out of the average 10.5, most of which comes from some sort of share-based compensation. Now, the problem, of course, with compensating CEOs almost entirely on shares, as opposed to on internal metrics, say, of revenue growth or something like that, is that there's a variety of ways to make the share price increase, and that may not be beneficial for the long-term growth of the company or for the Canadian economy, for instance. A good example of that is you could engage in a merger and acquisition. So you could buy another company, take on a big loan, buy another company. It's one of the best ways to destroy shareholder value when it goes sideways. That may be a good move on the long term for the company. In most cases, it isn't. And so this is particularly relevant for Canada, which has seen a massive increase in corporate debt in Canada, interestingly, a big portion of which has gone towards mergers and acquisitions, which are running about $100 or $200 billion a year. And so we come back to CEO compensation. CEOs are compensated in such a way that there is a bonus for short-term thinking, which is to say share price goes up, they can make more through their options or their shares and the capital gains and so on. Now, that may not be good for the company. It's certainly not good for Canada and our economy, but that's how they're paid. And so incentives really matter here when 90% of your pay comes from where the share price goes up and down, particularly in the short term, where there's volatility that you can come in, get shares at a lower value, and then sell them or exercise your options at a higher value. Well, that's then you're going to engage in mergers and acquisitions, or maybe you're going to cook the books. I mean, if things go really sideways.
Well, having said all that, and again, I'm going to go back to baseball here. When Donaldson signed that one-year contract for what is a very high salary, I frankly, and talking to my friends about this, talking to baseball buddies, I didn't hear anybody complain about it. I didn't hear anybody, given the economics of baseball today, say that is an outrageous price to pay for the guy. I didn't hear anybody saying that. Of course it's a lot of money, but I didn't hear anybody complaining. I heard people say, actually, well, you know what? That's what the market is, and if he can make it, good for him. Why do we not take the same approach to the corporate world?
I think that's a fair question. But the problem is in the corporate world, it's not clear how this so-called market works, right? If you look at who's setting compensation, the compensation is being set by a so-called compensation committee,
right,
of a supposedly independent board. And this is, by the way, this problem is not unique to Canada. The same problem happens in the US, to a far lesser extent in Western Europe, where you have like representation of labor on board, for instance, which kind of reins these things in. But you have these people who sit on each other's boards. Even if they are notionally independent, I can't sit on your board and you can't sit on my board. But I can sit on Jim's board and Jim can sit on your board and you can sit on you can sit on my board. So we're notionally independent, but we belong to the same circle. There's this line I heard that the average Canadian board is male, pale, and stale. So it's the same people coming from the same sort of socioeconomic indicators. There's very little diversity, ethnic, gender, or otherwise. And so these people are conditioned into believing, to use a line which was just used, that $5 million is a minimum wage for CEOs. So if that's the way the market works, it's clear that the market is broken. So
I presume, though, you're not about to recommend that governments in the country pass a law limiting how much people are allowed to earn.
Absolutely not.
Okay,
so I think it's like just like I think laws which says you can't eat 3 Big Macs or supersize your fries are also counterproductive. What you can do is you can try to work on the disclosure and you can try to work on the governance aspect of it. But if I may, I'd like to just bring my attention to one of the points which was raised earlier about by John about the fact that if you compensate people on earnings instead of stock market returns, it might fix things. That may or may not work because CEOs can manipulate earnings. I'm a professor of financial accounting. Okay, it's incredibly easy to increase revenues. It's incredibly easy to not just increase. Sometimes they make the numbers look worse. You might ask why. Well, if you're about to get a new option grant, you want your stock price to go down. So you make your performance look really bad. You have bad earnings.
You have creative accounting there, right?
Absolutely, and that lowers your stock price temporarily. You get a whole bunch of new options, and mysteriously the company turns itself around. And this happens all the time. Okay, so I think the problem fundamentally is not just about options versus, let's say, earnings-based measures. Having said that, I think the point he made about M&A is absolutely right.
Mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah, and anything. People look at absolute performance, that this person earned this much of earnings. They don't look at relative performance. Like what I mean is you need a scaled measure of performance. Relative to equity, shareholders' equity, how much income did you create? So I think we should start looking at things like return on assets and return on equity.
But still, at the end of the day, somebody's got to enforce that. Who does that?
No, I don't think it can be enforced, but I think, but these are things which boards...
Well, that's what I mean. The board would have to enforce it.
Absolutely. So you have
but
people
they've shown no interest in doing so.
Absolutely, because they sit on each other's boards.
Okay.
So I think if you tighten the laws on board independence, right? If you introduce diversity in boards, right? Just having people for whom $5 million is not a minimum wage sit on the board might itself lead to a reining in of excessive executive compensation.
Anything you're prepared to do about this?
Well, I agree.
You're not going to pass a law either, right?
Well, I mean, this is the trouble is if you pass laws, there, as you saw on the chart, there's a whole variety of ways that they're paid. And so what's interesting in the debate federally, in terms of closing the stock option deduction, for instance, it started in 2014, led into the federal election. It has not been closed, but what you see in the graph over time, when you're tracking which proportion CEOs are being paid in, you find that stock options actually decline pretty substantially after that point. I think in part because CEOs and pay committees were concerned that they were going to be taxed in the future on these stock options. And so what you see instead is you see that compensation push over to the share awards side. So you don't see a decline in compensation, you just see a movement in how that compensation is paid. And so if you want to make a change, it can't be to say, this is the silver bullet. We need to close this one tax loophole and that's going to solve the problem. This talks about the taxation aspect of it. Is that you could certainly make taxation fairer so that CEOs who are awarded stock options don't get 50% off on their tax bill, which they presently do.
How about this, though, David? Is there any evidence that you've seen around the world that if you put, let's say, an employee of the company or a few employees of the company on the board, that somehow has a dampening effect on the salaries that executives make?
Well, if you look at the ratio rankings of different countries, the U.S. is the worst. Canada is the second worst. And then you go to the European countries, Germany further down the line, where you see mandatory requirements of having workers on the board of directors. And so there's certainly a dampening effect there in how you design those boards of directors. I mean, there's not a free market. It's not a free-for-all for these public companies. There are substantial disclosure rules that they're required to make, governance rules, and so on. And we could change those rules such that you disencourage this kind of extreme pay.
Would you do that here in Canada? Force employees, there's a board seat for an employee in the company?
I think that's something which needs to be considered. I'll give you it's not just about the compensation. So people have done research looking at how firms manipulate their earnings, and they find that whenever they're negotiating with the unions, they always perform badly that year.
What a coincidence.
What a coincidence, right? So it's like, I'm sorry, I would love to pay you, but look at our financial statements, look at our books, we don't have any money. What they don't see is that's the year when the company is taking all kinds of expenses, all kinds of charges, all kinds of write-offs to depress their earnings. This kind of stuff happens all the time. So if you had, let's say, some sort of representation, on the board, it doesn't even have to be an employee, but if you have, like when you get the diversity on the board, right, you have people whose background is in such a way that they would naturally be looking beyond the interests of just the board members and the CEO.
So
they would
someone
look
could
broadly.
blow the whistle on that.
Not just blow the whistle, they could just say that this is wrong, we shouldn't be doing this. The problem is you have a board where there's very little diversity, not just diversity outwardly, there's very little diversity of thought. These people all come from the same training, the same backgrounds.
Theoretically, not theoretically, in fact, the Ontario government did, pass a resolution of some kind saying that it had some targets that it wanted companies that did business in the province of Ontario to meet in terms of female membership on boards.
Right.
And from what I understand, the numbers went from here to here over the past year. So
because those
much
laws
impact.
were non-binding and
Right.
they were more in the sense of if you are unable to meet this target, you need to write a one-paragraph note as to why you didn't meet that target.
Right.
Right? And everybody wrote that one-paragraph note about how we couldn't find that. But these things can be done. So for example, I'll give you an example, the Rooney Rule in the NFL, right? The fact is, before the Rooney Rule...
Hang on, we should just explain what that is.
The Rooney Rule says that you have to at least interview minority candidates for the
head coaching vacancies.
vacancies.
Yeah.
And in fact,
It's called the Rooney Rule after Mr. Rooney, who owned the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Whose current coach happens to be African-American as well. So it hasn't changed things dramatically, but now people get interviews. And that's the first stage, right? So even when you make these new rule changes, you can't expect the change to be instantaneous.
Following up on that, the fact is that the Rooney Rule is violated all the time, and much of the time it's just for show. You might bring an African-American coaching candidate in for a perfunctory interview with absolutely no intention of hiring that person, when in fact, the other white candidate who you really want is waiting out in the lobby to come up right after you've had your obligatory interview there. Mm-hmm. The question then becomes, can you actually mandate, can you force by law people to do what they don't want to do in this circumstance in order to tackle the issue that you've identified here?
Well, it is difficult. And if we look at CEO, the list of CEOs, of that 100 people, only 3 are women. I mean, this is outrageous. Now, it's up from 2 last year, which you might say, well, that's progress. But the problem is that David's, my first name, actually did better than women, because there's only 1 David on the list last year, and there's 3 this year. So outperformed all women. In fact, there's more Brians and Pauls than women in total. And so it just shows that this is an extremely... it's an old boys network. It continues to be an old boys network, despite highly qualified women that could certainly do these jobs.
All right, David, then how do we go from, if we go 1 a year, it'll be half a century before we have parity.
Yeah.
So presumably we don't want to wait that long.
Presumably.
So what do we want to do about that?
Well, again, I think part of it is to continue to hammer on the fact that CEOs, the C-suite in general, the directors, are not at all representative of Canadian society.
No, we know that, but what do we do about it now?
Well, we write a report every year in January to highlight that point.
Name and shame is basically what you're saying.
I think that's part of the story, and certainly part of the increased disclosure that companies are providing that allows for the types of reports that we put out that analyze those disclosures and say, look, the CEO pay is going up, there's no women, the diversity is terrible, in the hopes that that's we're not in government, and so we're commenting on this from the outside.
Last 30 seconds to you on what you think actually can be done about this.
I'm not sure what can be done. This is a serious problem, but I think what can be done is you can't expect people to be at the C-suite level right away. What you need is, at this stage, you need to be encouraging people who are at the mid-career, sort of mid-management. So if you get diversity at the middle levels now, hopefully some of that will filter into diversity
Over time.
Over time,
Right.
And that diversity would lead to like better, more representative boards, which will solve a whole bunch of problems. One of which happens to be, I don't want to use the word excessive, but certainly like unearned or like unmerited CEO compensation.
Can I tell you how much I appreciated the poetry of this discussion with naming and shaming and with male, pale, and stale? That was a good one, too. Okay. David McDonald, Partha Mohanram, we thank you both for appearing on TVO with us tonight.
Thanks.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Bacon is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario, helping businesses stay on the right side of change with strategic thinking, insightful decisions, and business leadership. Are you on the right side of change? Ask an Ontario CPA.